Hello, everyone. She used to say she wouldn't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. But now, she won't show her face without hiding it behind a scarf. There was a time when Linda Evangelista didn't just walk the runway, she owned it. Her face launched hundreds of covers. Her haircuts changed global trends overnight. Her voice sharp as glass. Her presence untouchable. She was part of the Big Five, the inner circle of beauty deities who made fashion photographers beg and editors obey. Naomi had the attitude, Claudia had the smile, but Linda had transformation. She could become anyone, anything. And she did. But one day she vanished. No farewell show, no glamorous retirement, just silence. And when she returned, she was unrecognizable, not from age, but from something worse. This is not just the story of a supermodel. This is the rise, the retreat, and the reckoning of Linda Evangelista. And it begins long before she ever walked in heels. Before she became the fashion world's most powerful chameleon, Linda Evangelista was just a quiet Catholic girl growing up in St. Catharines, a modest city tucked away in Ontario, Canada. She was born on May 10th, 1965, the daughter of hardworking Italian immigrants who believed in discipline, modesty, and silence in the face of hardship. Her father spent long hours on the factory floor at General Motors. Her mother worked as a bookkeeper, managing numbers with the same quiet precision that governed their household. There was no glamour in sight, no catwalks or couture, just snow-covered streets, blue-collar labor, and the deep-rooted values of survival and sacrifice. From a young age, Linda learned to observe rather than speak. In a home where feelings were rarely named and appearances mattered more than expression, she mastered the art of reading the room. She watched the way her father sank into silence after work, the way her mother moved with quiet efficiency through each day. Without knowing it, Linda was absorbing the unspoken rules of image, posture, presence. She didn't yet understand fashion, but she was beginning to grasp the language of control through grace. At age 12, she enrolled in a local modeling class, not because she had dreams of stardom, but because she wanted to learn how to carry herself with poise. That simple decision would change everything. During a regional beauty pageant, she caught the attention of a scout from a Toronto modeling agency. She didn't win the crown, but she was offered something far more valuable, a glimpse into another world. Her parents were hesitant. Modeling to them sounded like vanity wrapped in uncertainty. But Linda persisted, not through rebellion, but with calm conviction. She had spent her childhood fading into the background. Now, she wanted to take up space. By 16, she was flying to Japan for test shoots. It was her first time away from home, and the experience left scars. She didn't understand the language. She didn't understand the contracts. At one shoot, she was asked to pose nude, something that deeply violated the values she had been raised with. She said no. She walked away. And she returned home not defeated, but disillusioned. She had entered the industry with curiosity. She came back with awareness. She wasn't born for the runway. She was built by resistance. Every rejection, every insult, every moment of being told she didn't belong became part of her armor. The girl who once disappeared into uniforms and small-town judgment would soon become the woman whose face defined an era. Not because it fit the mold, but because it broke it. The second time Linda Evangelista left Canada to pursue modeling, she wasn't the same naive teenager who had once been blindsided in Japan. She was older now, just 19, but her eyes had changed. There was a sharpened clarity behind them. She understood that beauty was currency, but agency was power. This time, she flew to New York City, not to be discovered, but to begin building something on her own terms. With Ford models backing her, Linda began booking editorials and minor campaigns, the kind that paid just enough to survive but didn't yet promise stardom. Still, there was something magnetic about her presence. Photographers noticed that she didn't just stand in front of the camera, she transformed. Her face could shift from high fashion to raw vulnerability in a single frame. She studied light, angles, shadow. She knew where the camera was without being told. She didn't smile on command. She gave moments. But Linda didn't flinch. She embraced the new look with unapologetic confidence. She walked into castings as if the haircut had been her idea all along. And then something strange happened. After weeks of silence, the bookings returned. But this time, they weren't small, Chanel and Versace, Jean-Paul Gaultier. Suddenly, everyone wanted the girl with the daring hair. What was supposed to be a setback became her signature. The industry hadn't changed to fit her. She had changed the industry's idea of what was desirable. From that point forward, she was no longer just another model. She was a statement. In Milan, she closed runway shows with the ease of a queen surveying her court. In Paris, she commanded photographers with a glance. She posed not to please, but to declare. Every frame was a negotiation between art and dominance. Designers stopped giving her instructions. They just let her move. But even as her career gained speed, Linda was not chasing fame. She was chasing control. She wanted to choose who shot her, what brand she represented, what message she embodied. She turned down campaigns that clashed with her ethics. She walked out of shoots that didn't feel right. And because she had the talent and now the leverage, she could afford to say no. She wasn't interested in being everyone's darling. She wanted to be unforgettable. By 1990, she had joined the unofficial royal court of supermodels. Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Cindy Crawford, and Claudia Schiffer. Together, they ruled the decade. But even among giants, Linda stood out. She wasn't the most commercially appealing. She wasn't the most controversial, but she was the most versatile. She didn't just wear the clothes, she became the mood. Every editorial was a new persona, every runway a new chapter. She wasn't modeling clothes, she was modeling transformation itself. Looking back, the turning point wasn't the haircut or the campaigns. It was the moment she refused to be shaped by fear. The girl who had once been told to pose nude in Japan and said no had now become a woman reshaping an entire industry, one defiant decision at a time. By the early 1990s, Linda Evangelista was no longer just a model. She had become a myth in motion. When she stepped onto a runway, photographers didn't just capture her, they followed her, breathless, like hunters chasing a rare animal. She didn't walk, she glided. Her face wasn't merely beautiful, it was otherworldly, elastic, capable of bending to the vision of any designer and yet never losing itself. When Peter Lindbergh shot her with Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Cindy Crawford, and Tatjana Patitz for British Vogue in 1990, he wasn't just documenting a trend, he was birthing a new cultural era. That black and white portrait didn't just go viral before the word existed. It crowned them. The world called them the original supermodels. And Linda, with her cropped hair, severe stare, and regal poise, was the quiet center of the storm. She graced more than 700 magazine covers, a number that even Hollywood stars couldn't dream of. She walked for the holy trinity of couture Chanel, Dior, Givenchy, while also commanding campaigns from every side of the fashion spectrum. From high glamour to avant-garde, Linda made everything look intentional. Nothing ever felt accidental on her. Even her silences felt like strategy. But it wasn't just her look, it was her mind. She understood branding before models were expected to. She negotiated her contracts with precision, choosing quality over exposure, longevity over trend. She once said, "We don't wake up for less than $10,000 a day." The world mocked the statement as arrogant, but it wasn't arrogance, it was revolution. For the first time, models were demanding value. Linda wasn't just modeling clothes, she was modeling power. She didn't need scandal to stay in the headlines. Her presence alone was enough, in an industry that churned through faces. Linda held her ground through sheer force of reinvention. While others clung to a signature look, she burned hers down every season and emerged reborn. She became the archetype that every young model was measured against. But none could duplicate her, because what Linda possessed could not be taught. It wasn't the bone structure, the height, or the wardrobe. It was something else, something behind the eyes, a force. And yet, even as she stood at the summit of her industry, there was something in her that remained untouchable. She gave the world every image it wanted, but never fully surrendered the woman behind the lens. That mystery wasn't a marketing tactic. It was protection. It was control. Because even in her peak, Linda Evangelista knew that beauty fades, trends disappear. But legacy, that's something you carve into the bones of the industry itself. And she wasn't done carving. Linda Evangelista was never just another pretty face. She was the face that said no. In an industry built on submission where girls were expected to smile, nod, and comply, Linda chose confrontation cloaked in elegance. She never raised her voice, but her refusal could silence a room. While other models molded themselves to what designers wanted, Linda shaped the narrative around her. She made rejection look like strategy. She turned down brands that didn't align with her values. She walked out of shoots that tried to sexualize her against her will. She publicly criticized contracts that were exploitative. And she didn't apologize. Not for her standards, not for her ambition, not for knowing her worth. In a world where women were disposable, Linda made herself indispensable. Her defiance wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was calculated. Every no she said added to her mystique. Every decision she made outside the norm only made her more valuable. She didn't rebel because she wanted attention. She rebelled because she had already seen the cost of obedience. She had learned that early in Japan, and she never forgot. She also resisted the one thing most supermodels feared over exposure. She wasn't constantly on red carpets. She didn't chase talk shows. She wasn't interested in the cult of celebrity. She wanted to be known for her work, not her personal life. She refused to become tabloid fodder. She kept her private world tightly guarded. In a decade obsessed with sensationalism, Linda's silence became its own rebellion. She also challenged the idea that models were interchangeable. In the 90s, even the most successful models were expected to fade after a few seasons. Linda didn't. She refused to disappear. She evolved. With every shift in fashion's mood, she adapted. When grunge took over, she embraced raw minimalism. When couture returned, she delivered high drama. She was always ahead, never behind. Not because she chased trends, but because she transcended them. And perhaps most importantly, she challenged the way the world saw aging in fashion. Even as new faces emerged, Linda remained, not clinging to youth, but embracing her maturity with authority. She made space for longevity in a system obsessed with novelty. Her very existence on the runway year after year was an act of quiet protest. And in doing so, she showed a generation of women on and off the runway that power is not given, it's taken and kept. For years, Linda Evangelista stood at the center of the fashion universe, sharp, untouchable, revered. Then, without warning, she vanished. No farewell editorial, no final runway. Just absence. One day, she was everywhere. The next, she was gone. For almost 5 years, Linda disappeared from the public eye. Not because she wanted rest, but because she was hiding. Hiding from cameras, from questions, from mirrors. The woman whose face once defined beauty no longer recognized her own reflection. It wasn't age. It wasn't vanity. It was something deeper, something permanent. In 2015, Linda underwent a series of cosmetic procedures known as cool sculpting, a non-invasive treatment meant to reduce fat cells. The promise was simple: freeze away what the gym couldn't fix. But instead of sculpting her body, The treatment triggered a rare condition called paradoxical adipose hyperplasia. The fat cells didn't shrink, they multiplied, hardened, expanded. Left behind were bulges, unnatural shapes that couldn't be removed without surgery. Her face, her body, her instrument was altered against her will. She tried to fix it. She went through multiple corrective surgeries. The damage, both physical and psychological, lingered. What the industry had built on her image now became her prison. She couldn't model, she couldn't walk into rooms without covering her face. She couldn't be seen not as she was, not as they remembered her. And so, she stayed inside. For years. In the silence, she unraveled. Her self-worth, once rooted in control and transformation, now spiraled into shame and isolation. She stopped taking jobs. She stopped attending events. She stopped posing. The world moved on, not knowing that Linda Evangelista was trapped inside a body that no longer belonged to her. It wasn't until 2021 that Linda finally stepped forward. She released a public statement on Instagram, naming the condition. She called it by name. She named the company. She named the shame. I have been left. As the media described, unrecognizable, she wrote, I have developed depression, profound sadness, and the deepest depths of self-loathing. With that post, the silence broke. Her story went viral, not as a comeback, but as a reckoning. Suddenly, the world remembered. This was Linda Evangelista, the woman who changed the rules, the woman who said no before anyone else dared to. Now, she was saying yes to something much harder. Yes to being seen, not as perfect, not as flawless, but as human. What she endured was not a fall from grace. It was the price of a myth finally unmade. What do we remember when beauty fades? For Linda Evangelista, memory is not tied to perfection, but to presence. She was never the loudest, never the most scandalous, but somehow, she left the deepest mark. She changed how we look at models not as silent mannequins, but as artists, architects, and authors of their own image. Her legacy isn't just in the hundreds of covers or the millions she inspired. It's in the power she demanded, the refusals she made, the image she dismantled when the world tried to freeze her in one form. She made it okay to transform, to contradict, to vanish, and still be iconic. She showed us that beauty has limits, but dignity does not. That a woman can lose everything she was once praised for and still walk back into the light, not as a relic, but as a revelation. Her story is not just about modeling. It's about survival, about ownership, about saying, this is who I am now, and you will look. There are newer faces now, brighter lights, louder names, but none quite like hers. Maybe she wasn't forgotten. Maybe we just stopped remembering.